So, I grew up in rural Michigan. In an old farmhouse that sat on a square plot of land like an island, surrounded by cornfields on three sides and the steady traffic of US 12 on the other. Everyone knows that the Midwest is the agricultural heartland of America, but I never had to be told that. In the summer, I'd run into these towering rows of corn as fast as I could, the sky overhead turning from blue to green. In the fall, I'd ride with my father in his combine, a massive agricultural vacuum cleaner going row by row, sucking up thousands of acres of corn. As a child, farming was normal to me, as it has been to most people throughout history. As my favorite hat used to say, farming is everybody's bread and butter. So agriculture is nothing new, right? It's been a long time since humans switched from hunting and gathering to planting and harvesting. The principles of farming today would be recognizable to our ancestors, but the practice in modern times has really seen radical innovation. And the key driver for that change has been massive population growth. Today, there are over 7.2 billion people alive on this planet, a 70% increase from only a century ago. Like most industries in the modern era, agriculture responded to this need by embracing technological advances. And it worked. The yields in our crops have increased by 800% in the last century. This growth and the technology that drove it happened in stages, and it can be looked at in terms of technological eras. So we start off with mechanization in the early 1900s. It allowed farmers to harness engines and gasoline to expand the amount of acreage that they could work. In the 1930s, genetic hybrids dramatically improved the seeds themselves. After World War II, farming had a chemical era in which the technology that was originally developed for the war was used to make synthetic fertilizers and pesticides to fight the perpetual enemy of crop-destroying insects. And in the 1990s, further genetic innovation resulted in super seeds, resistant to both insects and herbicides, so blanketing fields with chemicals would kill everything but the corn. Along with this growth came consolidation. So throughout the 20th century, even as the amount of farmland here at the bottom remains fairly constant, there's been a trend towards fewer and fewer farms, each with an expanding amount of acreage. As farming became ever more sophisticated, it demanded a higher price of entry. All this technology does not come cheap. Farmers saw their capital expenses skyrocket relative to their income, meaning that farmers had to take on more and more risk every year. It takes a gambler's mindset to play the farming game. People like my dad sit down at that agricultural poker table every year because this is a passion-fueled business, full of people who can't imagine doing anything else. Which is how the average farmer gets sucked into this feedback loop of high risk, flat return, and an increasing dependency on whatever big ag has to offer. What choice do farmers have but to buy into the latest technology, whether it's monoculture planting, blanket pesticides, or Roundup-ready corn? These blunt tools promise a way to avoid catastrophe. There's always been risk in a profession that's dependent on a combination of weather and the market. But now the possibility of bankruptcy after just one bad year looms larger than ever. And we're now entering the next technological era in farming called precision agriculture, or sometimes data-driven agriculture. This era is defined by how farmers can utilize things like embedded microcontrollers, sensors, and the internet to plan, monitor, and perform their farming operations. Physical devices are increasingly being embedded with computation and network connectivity. The press sometimes refers to this broader trend as the Internet of Things. Farmers don't tend to use that phrase, but agriculture is actually ahead of other industries in finding real and productive uses for this technology. For example, there's farm management platforms that allow you to track all of your equipment, know where it's located, allow for geofencing and curfews and usage alerts. There's GPS-enabled yield monitors that can provide sub-field analysis of a harvest in real time. These results can later be combined with other data to inform dynamic seeding, where the planter varies the depth and the seed type throughout the field for the most optimal planting situation. Self-driving tractors can perform fully autonomous tasks, or they can act as tag-along vehicles after other human-driven vehicles. Sensor technologies like LiDAR use lasers to achieve a precision and reliability well beyond GPS. And farm drones can analyze the health of crops from the sky and create variable rate nitrogen prescription maps, which are then fed into a sprayer to avoid wasting fertilizer. These are real examples of technology offering new capabilities. But are they actually good for Midwestern farmers? BigAg's visions for the future are often very top-down. They exploit technical possibilities, but they leave it up to the farmers to do the math on if it's worth the investment. This technology is costly, and the farmer's data is often captured and owned by the equipment manufacturer. Privacy and data ownership debates are a hot topic, ag world versions of the controversies that surround Google and Facebook. Looked at from this angle, precision agriculture is little more than a silicon-powered continuation of the status quo, another era that extends the consolidation and corporatization of food production. In the last decade, there's been a parallel revolution in food that has nothing to do with big ag. In fact, it's quite the opposite. This is the rise of the so-called locavore movement, where consumers seek a closer connection to the food that they eat. Locavores want healthy food, locally grown, and a good story about where it came from. Part of that story that's compelling is the technology that isn't used. So no pesticides, no cages, no genetic modification or non-organic processes. The desire to eat locally has seen the number of farmers markets expand dramatically. It's up 470% in the last decade. There's also been growth in CSAs, or community-supported agriculture, where farmers send boxes of food directly to subscribers throughout the year. But is the locavore movement really helping Midwestern farmers? On the consumer side, there's plenty of demand and demanding points of view, but rarely are they connected to the economics of farming. Instead, they're often conflated with broader cultural trends of slow living and getting back to basics. There's been a rise of interest in things like craft, in handmade processes, and in a simple approach to life. Yeah. Which in many ways is wonderful, but sometimes it's more of a half-truth, a privileged and distorted view of reality that rejects technology out of hand. Today, there is a hipster fetish around low-tech farming, a kinfolk magazine lifestyle dream of raising chickens in your backyard and foraging on the weekends. Office workers spend their lunch breaks reading homesteading blogs and fantasizing about working the land with their bare hands. The dream of the 1890s is alive in Portland, and publications like Modern Farmer magazine have emerged to capitalize on the brand of small farms rather than serving the needs of small farmers. Case in point, I found this copy in my room at the Ace Hotel in Palm Springs. When she accepted her National Magazine Award, editor Anne-Marie Gardner drove home the point by unapologetically describing Modern Farmer as the farming magazine for media professionals. The unsullied, pre-industrial, pastoral lifestyle makes for some really great photographs. But the fact of the matter is that the average Midwestern farmer still just barely makes ends meet. Farming is hard, back-breaking, mud-covered, deep in debt, 24/7, risk it all, pray for rain hard. And rejecting a century of agricultural innovation doesn't make it any easier. And that's what's interesting to me about this latest era of farming technology. When you look at precision agriculture, the tools and platforms in use aren't the inaccessible or morally questionable realms of chemical compounds or genetic manipulation. The democratization of technologies like microcontrollers, software, and the internet have already disrupted countless other industries, and now may be the time for farming. We are in an extraordinary position that today a quarter of all American farmers are beginning farmers. This is a chance for them to embrace this new era and define it as one that does more than just increase yield, but empowers them to make their own technology decisions. Some are doing just that. They're appropriating cheap technology to farm more efficiently and then sharing that with other people in an open source manner. FarmHack is the main community that aggregates this knowledge and organizes real-world events where farmers can meet up and collaborate with designers and engineers who are interested in agriculture. The way they put it, they're tired of being dependent on the R&D departments of big ag companies. FarmHack is ground zero for the self-empowered precision ag community. Coming out of a FarmHack meetup, you might see things like Rover, which is an electric fence you can switch on and off with a text message. RainCloud, a web-based irrigation system with soil moisture sensors. Or FarmBot, a scalable precision farming machine inspired by CNC. These projects emerge from a collaboration between technologists and farmers. For example, Apitronics, a prototyping platform for farm technology, was founded by Louis Theory, who attended FarmHack meetups and got frustrated how existing tools like Arduino weren't up to the task. So he created a waterproof, solar-powered, field-ready electronics prototyping platform. The goal is for farm developers to work on a common open platform designed to be hacked and shared. Theory talks about how farmers of the future are not necessarily going to be coming from a farming background, meaning that the ways in which they farm are just now being developed. Carl DeSalvo from the Georgia Institute of Technology has also been working at the intersection of design, technology, and food systems for years. He was an early voice in calling for ag tech solutions that address non-industrial farming needs. He's also hosted workshops between designers and farmers to try to tease out alternative uses for technology, a bottom-up approach that's revealed ideas Big Ag would have overlooked. One example that emerged from these workshops is a robot designed to use vision sensors to collect information about pests throughout a farm, but not take action. The robot would return the information to the farmer, who can then make decisions on sustainable approaches to pest management. The future. So the world's population is only going to continue to grow. It's projected to be 8 billion people by 2024. The scale of the problem requires an appropriate scale of solution, not turning back the clock to become photogenic subsistence farmers. It's not surprising that consumers have rebelled against agricultural technology in the last few decades. There have been seriously negative trade-offs made between increased yield and environmental impact. But I believe that this era is different, or it can be different, because the democratization of this technology will help farmers whether their focus is on reducing risk or reducing pesticides. Precision agriculture is a tool that can reflect, not reject, the values of the farmers who use it. Today, we see a possible future where the false dichotomy between food technology and healthy living is broken down. A future where informed consumers might demand that their local organic food is grown in a data-driven manner, ensuring the most efficient use of resources. A future where starting a farm can be easier and less risky, with modular farm tech startup kits that support new farmers and help them grow. A future where the story of our food isn't just a fuzzy one from farm to table, but an even more detailed and accurate account, a data-rich journey that precisely tracks a single seed from one field to a person's plate. When I was a kid in rural Michigan, I didn't want to be a farmer. I was more interested in electronics, computers, and the internet. If I was growing up today, maybe things would have been different. This era is exciting to me because it's still being defined. Farming is normal. Farming is nothing new. But the way that we do it still has a lot of room to improve. That's it.